with the 2020 draft in the books, we are pleased that we feel like we were able to add a number of young, talented players to the roster this weekend who fit our offense and defensive schemes. Uh, we feel like we were able to address a number of needs across the roster on both sides of the ball. And then, perhaps most importantly, we feel good about adding a number of individuals that embody the tough, smart, accountable culture that we're trying to build upon here in Cleveland. Um, Want to say, point out a couple groups that have gotten us to this point in the weekend. Certainly, our pro and college scouting staffs, our research and strategy group, our coaches who have put in a ton of hours, IT and video in terms of handling really unprecedented circumstances with this draft, and then our contract management team as well. It really has been a collaborative effort, to execute on our plan and vision for this draft. And a lot of people have put in a lot of time to get us to this point. And lastly, before opening up to questions, I wanted to actually thank you guys all for your patience. I know it's a very long weekend for everybody who's involved in the draft process, whether it's the club side or in the media, and certainly appreciate your guys' patience, particularly tonight as we try and wrap up the undrafted free agent process. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that you guys may have.
Excellent. Thanks, AB. Mary Kay, the first question is to you.
Hey, Andrew, can you just address the tight end situation and kind of wrap up for us what your thoughts are on David Njoku, and do you still plan on signing him to the 5th-year option?
Yeah, so in terms of the tight end situation, we feel very good about that room. We think it's very talented. We have a number of guys that we think are, and certainly with Harrison, will be good NFL players. We've said from the start that it's a very tight end friendly and tight end heavy system. I think last year in Minnesota, Kevin as the OC, in addition to running a lot of 12, one back, two tight end personnel, and 21, 2 backs, 1 tight end. He also ran a lot of 13 with 1 back and 3 tight ends. So again, it's a very tight end friendly system. To David in particular, our perspective remains the same. I've been pretty consistent this offseason in terms of we still have a ton of belief in David. He's very talented. Obviously he wasn't on the field much last year, but he's a guy with outstanding physical tools. He has proven NFL production, and we still think the future is very bright with him here. So David has always been and continues to be in our plans, and we're going to continue to add competition all across the roster.
And you will go ahead and pick up the option?
Yeah, so I wouldn't, Mary Kay, kind of like at the combine, I wouldn't comment on any of those those decisions in this situation, or in this context. But again, we see David as part of our long-term plans.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Scott Petrik.
Hey, Andrew. I was wondering about defensive end. We've talked so much about, or we've written a lot about Olivier Vernon and the big contract he has for 2020. But you guys don't draft a defensive end today. Is the plan to bring back Olivier?
Yeah, so Scott, this is probably another one of those questions where I'm, pretty much in the same space. Olivier is a good football player, and we like having good football players on the roster. He's a talented defensive end. He's here and he'll continue to be here. So,
thanks.
All right, thanks, Scott. Nate Ulrich, we are coming to you now. Hang on 1 second. You're open.
Hey, Andrew. Can you just give us your overview of how you thought you and Kevin Stefanski worked and played off each other in your first draft together? And, I know you opened up by saying that you got guys who fit and filled some needs, but is there a big picture accomplishment that you come away with as a major takeaway?
Yeah, I love working with Kevin. Just period. His insight, his calmness, his intelligence. It really doesn't matter the situation that we're dealing with, and certainly his presence is more than appreciated. Over the course of the last 3 days going through the draft, and it's not just his insight with how players marry a scheme or his own individual evaluations, but he's also such a a great thought process, thought partner in terms of strategy, not just X's and O's, but things we do on the personnel side or as we're thinking through things on the clock. So I really couldn't ask for a better partner, really in any situation. And I'm really pleased with how our first draft has gone as a group.
All right, thank you, Nate. We'll go to Tony Grossi next.
Hi, Andrew. Apologize for the darkness. I'm quarantined in my car right now, but it is stopped.
Okay, no problem, Tony.
Follow up on Njoku. Would you say that the new CBA rule fully guaranteeing that fifth-year option just in general complicates the decision?
Not at all, Tony. Doesn't complicate it at all. Probably on one technicality, that full guarantee that applies to the 2018 draft class, not necessarily the 2017 draft class. But even if it was for Njoku's class, it wouldn't complicate the decision at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next, we'll go to Marla.
Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to know kind of like how the whole process went with, the restrictions, not being together. Did you have like lots of guys? I mean, like the old school pounding the table. Did people, fight for their guys? I mean, how do you think the whole thing went that way?
Yeah, so Marla, I think what you're getting at is in terms of soliciting input, and that part was very smooth. Now we try and organize a process where a lot of those more difficult discussions and thoughts are expressed beforehand. So when we get to the draft and we get on the clock, it's more about execution. But you can't plan for all those situations because the board may fall differently. But I can assure you, we have a very strongly opinionated group, which is a good thing because they push me on my own assumptions. They're not afraid to express when they disagree, and everyone does it at the proper times. And we just have so many different perspectives, whether it's college scouting, pro scouting, research and strategy, coaching, and that's really, really healthy. So we were at no shortage of ideas and the right perspectives in the room at the right time. But that's one of the things I'm probably most proud of from this weekend.
Were they pushing you frequently?
They always push me frequently, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Scott Petrick.
Hey, Andrew, you took two guys from LSU that won national titles last year. You had Wills that won one as a freshman. Harris went to the playoffs. How important was it for you to get guys who were winners in college, maybe especially given that your locker room doesn't have a whole lot of playoff experience?
Yeah, Scott, this may be maybe perhaps a little bit of an unpopular take, but I wasn't so much focused on that as much, just because football really is the consummate team sport. So just because someone was on a winning team doesn't necessarily automatically mean they have the right makeup for your program. Just like someone, who may have been in a program that wasn't as talented or didn't win as many games doesn't mean that they're not the right fit for your team. So we really tried to look at each of these players individually and how they operated in their college environments within the things that they could control. And we feel good about the people that we've brought into the building for sure.
Cool.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to Jeff Shadell. Jeff?
Andrew, could you talk about what you did in free agency, how that coupled with what you did these last 3 days in the draft?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Jeff, because you do try and marry both in terms of building your roster. So free agencies, I do think, allowed us to remain flexible within the draft. It allowed us to add talent to some specific spots on the roster. And so we do think that it served as a pretty good foundation leading into this weekend. But taking them both together, we do like where we sit here on April 25th. But that being said, we do have 4 or 5 months till our first game. And the offseason or personnel cycle, it doesn't just end tonight. There's still plenty of work to be done on the roster. There's still going to be opportunities over the next several months, and we'll continue to explore those.
Thank you, Jeff. Dan Lobby.
Andrew, there were a couple guys today who talked about their Senior Bowl experience this year, and with your guys' inability to bring guys into the building and work guys out, you have your 30 visits, I guess I should say. And I know you weren't here during that All-Star circuit, but did that information, was that more useful to you guys this year than maybe in years past, or more vital than in years past because of the process?
To be honest, Dan, I think it was about as equally vital. The Senior Bowl, the All-Star Game circuit, that's a big piece of, what we'll do as a scouting staff. But at the same time, even though guys can't necessarily come on site, we still were able to have very many touch points, whether it's, no different than how you and I are talking right now. The workout piece, that's perhaps a little bit more challenging if a guy's hurt or you want to see him in a different position. You just want to see something specific. But fortunately, we did solve the combine, and at the end of the day, there's plenty of film from any individual's fall over the past 2 years, and that ultimately weighs the most. So,
thanks.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to Daryl Ryder.
Hey, Andrew, leading up to the draft, you were pretty candid about tempering expectations for some of these guys. They were going to be unfinished products. There's going to be some development required with some of them. On the 7 players that you added over the weekend, can you maybe break down a little bit how many guys you feel can step in immediately and provide you that impact you're looking for, and how many the organization's going to be patient with and really bring them along?
That's a good question, Daryl. And I've been humbled enough over my NFL career to realize that you really don't know. There are going to be guys that surprise us likely in both directions, because each of these guys are individuals entering the NFL for the first time, and that doesn't just mean acclimating to NFL competition, but a new organization, a new city, and a totally new dynamic than where they were in college. So that process is challenging for a lot of young players. But we're confident that we have a coaching staff that's going to work with these guys. We're confident that we're going to create the right environment with our support staff and give these guys the best chance to hit the ground running. But also being humble enough to realize that each player matures differently in the NFL.
And if I can follow up real quick, drafting Nick Harris there, the impact, J.C. Tretter was just signed in November to that extension. Do you view Harris as a guy that'll be a multiple role type of player, or do you really view him as maybe the future center of the team?
Yeah, we view Nick as another good young player that we had the opportunity to acquire at that point in the draft. Do view his skill set as a little bit more, focused at center, Daryl, and I think he's a perfect scheme fit for what we want to do with our offense because of his movement skills, athleticism, and intelligence. But obviously we have, we love JC. He's our starter. He's proven player, proven veteran, at the position for a number of years. And Nick will learn a lot from him, as well as a number of the veterans that we have in that position group.
Thanks.
Harry Pluto.
Andrew, did you, obviously you didn't really trade up. Were you tempted? Were you able to, kind of not reach for people?
No, Terry, there were a few situations where we considered it.
Mm-hmm.
I know we moved down the board more often this weekend than up the board, and longer term, that's a little bit more in line with
Mm-hmm.
our philosophy. But that also doesn't mean that we won't be opportunistic because there are situations where it does make sense. We were fortunate that the board fell in our favor in a lot of key spots, but that won't be the case every year.
Right, because I was thinking, it sounded like you really liked Elliott. He fell to you, and the Delpit, especially those two. I'm not sure on these other guys, but you trade down. It sounds like you got a guy that you kind of had a bullseye on his back anyway.
Yeah, no, we were fortunate that we had a number of players or targeted guys at the trade down spots that we were still able to acquire while picking up extra draft capital.
And just one last thing, you've been talking about development or whatever. I mean, a part of that is having continuity, on the coaching staff and front office. And I wonder, how can you, I guess, how can you accelerate that when you've got a whole new group of coaches, front office there to accelerate the development process?
Yeah, I don't know that we can accelerate continuity. I mean, that's
Yeah.
going to take time, and I'm sure we're going to have our hiccups. But one thing before I came on to talk with you guys is, I expressed to our coaches, our scouts, our research group, contract management, our support staff, just I have an immense sense of pride for how this group has come together in, call it, 90 days amid the circumstances this spring. It's been remarkable, and it's a credit to all the people that have adjusted across different roles, because we wouldn't be anywhere close to where we need to be without those contributions. And that group as a whole, it just doesn't get enough credit, and they really should.
Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Tom Withers, you're up.
Thank you, Rob. Andrew, the NBA is going to allow facilities to be reopened as early as this Friday. Has the NFL given you guys any guidance in terms of when these guidelines will either be relaxed or a date by which they'll make a decision to let you know what could happen over the next couple of weeks or months?
Tom, we haven't gotten anything specific yet. We're hopeful that we'll get some movement next month, but until we do, we'll roll with the punches, and we'll be as prepared as we can possibly be. Until circumstances resolve and return to normal.
And as you know, all things considered, this went pretty well from a logistical standpoint for you guys. And it seemed like this was really embraced by the fans, because it did allow them to get a snapshot at some of these guys and their families and those kind of interactions. Could you see this as something that we would do going forward, or some kind of derivation of this?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I was actually talking about that with my wife last night, and she was actually making a similar comment that it was actually pretty cool, because it just brings perhaps a little bit more of a human element to a lot of the key people in this weekend. And I don't know that this will be the standard operating protocol. That's really not my decision to make, but I think everybody can appreciate that this was certainly a unique draft, but there were some pretty cool things that came out of the weekend as well.
Relations Department, wonderful job this weekend.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question. You got muted there a little bit.
Not a question. Just wanted to say thanks to the media relations people for a fantastic job this weekend. This was really smooth on our end. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry for the quick trigger there. We're going to go to Doug.
Hey, Andrew. You and Kevin have both talked several times about obviously wanting to draft the best players, but also guys who fit you guys culturally, scheme-wise. Could you just maybe take us through an example of one of the guys you got when you have a player that you like, but you really think is a scheme fit, is just a fit for you, and then you're trying to see, is he going to get us at this pick? Yes, we like other players maybe, but this guy just fits us in so many ways. You talk a lot about fit. I'm just wondering how fit really manifests in the draft room when you're thinking, oh, this guy'd be a perfect Brown.
So part of it is it's less about when we get to the point where we're actually making player selections, Doug, it's not about determining, okay, does this guy fit now? We build our board when our scouts come out of the fall, we build our board and massage our board with our team in mind, like with fit within our offense and defensive systems in mind. And really the draft process, to some degree, it becomes at least like a 15-month elimination process, because you may start with a pool of, a couple thousand seniors and underclassmen across college football, and you whittle your board, not just on talent, but it could be, fit within the offensive defensive system, character, mental, you name it. And so you get to a point where, at least in our case, we would have a board of about 140 players that we thought appropriately fit what we were looking for, within the Browns organization: talent, scheme fit, character, mental, you name it. So that's really baked in before we get to the weekend, where when we're selecting players, we're selecting from a menu, so to speak, of players that we think would be good Cleveland Browns.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. We'll go to Mary Kay.
Hey, Andrew, can you just what did you see in Donovan Peoples-Jones, and kind of what do you think his upside is, and if he's kind of as good as everybody's talking about, and people are getting really excited about him, why do you think he lasted until the 6th round?
Yeah, so do think that Donovan's a talented young player. He's got good size. He's athletic, strong, just really a well-rounded physical skill set. Um, it does have some return ability, and we think he has some flexibility to play outside and inside. Do think that this was a pretty deep receiver class. So I do think there are a number of players that probably really from first round down that fell in spots that in a given year they may have gone a little bit higher. In terms of his ceiling and upside and where we expect him to be, I'm not going to speculate on that. We do think he's a very talented individual, but at the same time, he's going to have to put the work in. He's going to, just like all these guys, they're going to have to earn their playing time and ultimately prove it on the field. So, certainly what he did in college has gotten him to this point, but all these guys are going to have to take a step forward to make sure that they're capitalized on their potential.
We're going to go 4 more here.
All right, we'll take the 4 that are left. We'll go to Steve Dorshik.
Andrew,
hey, Steve.
This first question will lead into the draft question, but going back to your last game and your first shift with the Browns, the game at Baltimore, the Browns were on the verge of winning that game and being 8-7-1 with a lot of magic in tow. Do you remember sitting at that game and what you were thinking at that point was the Browns had accomplished and where they were going at that moment?
Steve, I don't want to mislead you. I don't know that really resonates with me. I do remember anxiety during the game because we were driving down at the last minute, hopefully for a go-ahead score. It didn't quite work out. We had a turnover at the end of the game, but that's pretty natural for any close game. I don't know that it had any maybe greater significance or meaning to me at the time because you really do try and isolate those moments.
But my point, Andrew, would be that you're trying to get back to. So many people would like to see the Browns get back to that moment when there was some magic and some hope, and the roster seemed to be building. How much do you feel has been built in free agency and with the draft toward restoring some magic and legitimate hope that the Browns are going to be a really strong team this year?
We're excited about what we've done so far this spring. We like the guys that we've added in free agency. We like the guys that we've traded for. We like the guys that we've added in the draft. But we're also not naive that we still have work to do, and we still have several months till we're playing, which gives us several months to continue to improve the roster. That all being said, we're certainly hopeful and optimistic with the individuals that we've added to the team, but we also know it all has to play out in the fall, and we think we have the right guys and the right players where we're optimistic that will happen, but it does have to play itself out, and we've got a lot of hard work on the field to do before that comes to fruition.
Thank you.
Anthony? Sorry, your line's now open.
Okay, cool. Hey, Andrew. A few GMs were unsure about how the process of signing undrafted free agents would go given the unique circumstances of the draft this year. So would you give us some insight into how difficult and different that process has been so far?
That's another good question. Anthony, the biggest difference is it's probably no different than being in the draft. So a lot of the undrafted free agent process occurs on the phone, whether after the draft we're on the phone with the player's agents or we're doing a little recruiting with the actual player. Where it's different is if we're in the facilities, everyone's in the same building, everyone's generally in the same hallway, our scouts and coaches. Here, we just did it through Microsoft Teams. So that was really the biggest difference. We had a pretty smooth and organized process. It does create some more challenges because you do have a big group that's trying to communicate over a virtual platform, but it really didn't slow us down that much, and we feel really good coming out of the process.
Nate Ulrich, it's to you.
Andrew, you answered part of this earlier by saying that you look at Nick Harris as a center, really. Because I was going to ask you about the plan at right guard and if he factors into that. But can you just outline the plan at right guard?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a number of interior players that we will cross train. Nick's primary home has been at center throughout his college career. That doesn't mean that he's not going to take some guard snaps, but we have a couple young players there, whether it's Nick or Wyatt Teller or Drew Forbes or we signed Evan Brown recently. A number of guys who have played both center and guard, so it should be good competition at that spot.
And we have, I don't think, talked about restructuring with Chris Hubbard. What is your outlook for him?
Yeah, so Chris, again, he's another valuable veteran on the offensive line, a guy who's been very versatile over the course of his career. He's played basically every position up and down the line, but center, and he's done those in games. And obviously over the last 2 years here, he's played predominantly right tackle, but versatile, experienced veteran linemen. They're valuable. Again, there are 162 starters in the league, and every year you get to August and teams are calling, hey, do you know where I can find another tackle? Or do you know where I can find another lineman? So again, Chris is going to be a valuable member of the team.
Thank you, Nate. And to close out the 2020 NFL Draft, Scott Petrick.
A lot of pressure. Andrew, you talked about addressing some needs during the draft, and I know you're always looking to get better everywhere, but do you come out of here saying, I still need to target position A or B and what that position would be?
Still need to target everywhere in terms of talent, Scott. I know that's probably not the response you were looking for, but it truly has to be the mindset. The more talent we can add on the roster, the better chance that we have to win, and the better chance that our coaches have to be able to run their systems and schemes. So we're going to focus everywhere. We're going to continue to focus everywhere. But
is there a spot where you say, I'm not comfortable going into camp or whenever the offseason starts with the group I have, I need to add more bodies?
It'll be continuous improvement everywhere we can find it.